guys to hear John and to hear his story. And so we were talking through this, and we decided an interview would probably be the best way to be able to make this work. And so I'm really excited for that. So if you guys may not know, some of you guys have been with us from day one. Some of you guys may be here for the very first time this week, and anywhere in between. John and his wife Kirsta have been with us since the very beginning. And so now they have a brand new baby, which is awesome. And so we're going to grow the church one way or another. That's awesome. And so, but John and Kirsta have been with us since the day one. Before this scene, when I was still a youth pastor in North Lakeland, thinking about what it was going to look like to plant a church. The story goes very quickly in that Kirsta, John's wife, was in Kim and I's youth group many years ago when we were at a church in Plant City, and I was looking for a worship leader, and I knew John was a worship leader, and so John and I ended up meeting at a Starbucks in Plant City to say, hey bro, I'm getting ready to plant a church, and I'm looking for somebody to come lead worship. What do you think? And so we just talked through it, and it's been a great partnership. I love him. I love Kirsta. And I'm just excited for their family to be part of this. And I'm really excited for you guys to get a chance to really hear his story. So,
just tacking off to what Kevin said about being at Starbucks. He actually didn't ask me to come on board as a worship leader. He's like, hey, do you know anybody? Do you have any ideas? You know, just after hearing what he felt laid on his heart for CityPlace Church, I just felt this, I don't know, I can't explain it other than a God thing just welling up inside me. He's like, go. I was already serving faithfully at the church before that, and he just like, go. So, here we go.
Yeah, our initial meeting wasn't even for me to say, hey, come lead worship for us. It was just like, hey, bro, I know all you worship leaders hang out together. So, you know anybody that leads worship. And
this
he was
is
like,
not true.
So I learned something that day too. But and then it ended up in a conversation of going, well, Kirsten's been praying about finding and faithfully looking for a place. And it's just been great. It's been awesome to have him and Kirsten part of our church from the beginning, from a meeting at a church on Sunday nights to a crusty, nasty school cafeteria that we're grateful for to this. And so that they've been part of all of it. And so it's just been really good. So I'm going to ask John some questions this morning. He's going to give you guys some answers. But here's the idea. Just open up your hearts and your minds this morning. We all have a different story. All of us as a staff and all of you as individuals. That we all have a different story. We all have things that God is doing in our lives or has done in our lives or maybe we would allow God to do. And so I think that every single one of us and our stories as a staff is relatable to somebody in the audience. And so every single one of our staff has heard from people after their message, thank you. I related to that. Man, I needed to hear that. So you may not relate to my story, you may not relate to Ken's, but you may relate to John's this morning. And so, this morning we're going to take a few minutes, give John a chance to kind of tell us a little bit about like where he grew up, a little bit about what his childhood was like. And so let's just start there, man. Like, tell us where you grew up and that kind of thing.
So I was born in North Carolina, but my dad was in the Army, so if you ask where I grew up, it's kind of like everywhere. We were kind of stationed somewhere different every 2 to 3 years. I think our longest stay was like 4 years in Riverview, Florida, which was kind of why we ended up back here. My mom and dad fell in love with it, so we eventually came back, and this is where he retired. So we moved every 2 to 3 years. My dad had some strange gift where he could learn foreign languages. I did not hear that gift. He tried to teach me Arabic, and after 30 minutes, I was just, I don't have that. But so we were stationed in Kuwait for 2 years. We were in Jordan for a couple of years while we were over there. Flying from there is so much cheaper, I guess, because oil there is so much cheaper. So flying in an airplane is really nice. So we vacation from there. We went to Australia, England, Italy, Thailand. So we got to see a lot of the world. I've been to every continent except for Antarctica. So that's not on my bucket list. So that's kind of where I grew up. The world.
Tell us a little bit about just your childhood and your dad's in the military, your mom, your relationship, your brother, that kind of thing. Just tell us a little bit about like what your childhood was like.
So my family was actually a very devout Christian family. It's interesting hearing all the stories from our staff, but actually not very many of us came from that background. I think Kim was the only one that was actually raised in the church, so it was kind of crazy to see how a pastoral staff, the majority of them was not raised in this lifestyle. So it's kind of crazy to see how God has shaped all of our lives in that way. But I actually was raised in the church. My parents were not rich, but we had everything we needed. I wouldn't say we were wealthy, but we never went without. So to an extent, I would say we were pretty privileged. I know they had hard times before I came along, but from my birth on, we were good. My parents were always one unit. They never fought in front of us. I have two older brothers. One's 4, one's 6 years older than me. So I'm the baby. And I'm about to turn 30, so I'm running at my dad's face that he's getting older. It's dangerous. So we were always in church every time the doors were open, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesdays, if there was anything in between, we were always there. My parents volunteered both in children's ministry. My mom, I don't know if you guys ever heard of the Awanas, but my mom was a Cubbies leader for as long as I can remember. My dad would help with the older kids, and they were just always volunteering. They were in the choir, they were on the worship team, whatever. Like my parents were always involved. So I wasn't a PK, but I kind of felt like a PK, pastor's kid. You know, the church lingo. It kind of seemed like there was that expectation. I was also homeschooled because of our military life. It was just easier instead of 7 to 3 years doing the whole unenrolling. And enrolling in new school is easy, just take it all with us, so nothing ever affected us that way. So all of my friends were in the church because that's where most of my social life was, so I was the good kid. I was a big mama's boy, loved my mama. My mom did all the homeschooling and pretty much everything else. While my dad had worked crazy hours, he'd be gone, because of the military, he'd be gone like 5 o'clock in the morning, so long before I woke up. I was not a morning person. Then he wouldn't get back till like an hour or 2 to go to bed, so sometimes he'd work weekends, he'd get deployed overseas. He went to Haiti, I think when there was conflict there. He was in the Middle East when the whole Iraq thing went down how long ago. My mom's side of family stories that he had something to do with Saddam Hussein, but he didn't. He was not there. They're convinced he's a spy. I don't know why. But, so to an extent, for me, I kind of felt like my dad wasn't there, even though he was. I don't know, almost like an absent. Not really. I don't really know how to put it, but like he was there, but I kind of felt like he wasn't. I'd be like, hey dad, you want to hang out and stuff like that. I would always try to seek his attention and like be like, oh, I gotta go to work today. So to me, it kind of felt like he wasn't really around, but I was always seeking his approval. I never touched drugs, I never touched alcohol in school. Touch on that later, but we'll get to that. I was always a straight A student, so every time I got an A, I'd hey dad, like just to get that approval. I was trying to get that from him. But since he was always at work or just kind of not around it, I was seeking it from elsewhere. So like other leaders in the church and the other adults that I looked up to. And as I got to high school, even in the church, I started to get bullied a little bit just because I was a straight A student and I was surrounded by jocks and pretty people. And I was not pretty. I struggled with my weight. I had acne all over. It was not cute. So I think because of my homeschool background, I was protected from that a lot. You know, in public schools, it's so much worse. So probably getting bullied in the church youth group is nothing compared to being bullied in schools. But there's still a little bit of that. It's weird to be made fun of for being smart, but so I didn't really know how to handle that. Anyway, so if y'all don't know me, my love language is words of affirmation. That's like my primary love language. And for someone who has that as their primary love language, it takes a lot when you hear those negative words. That has such a huge impact. As much as the positive words do, the negative words have such a bigger impact. It takes a lot of positive words to recover and build that self-confidence from the negatives that you keep hearing. So that's another reason why I grew so close to my mom was she was always there. She was like, you know, you're a great person, you have a great personality, you're so nice. It's like, oh, nice, but I'm not pretty like the others. But So, the combination of having a dad who I felt like was never there, being made fun of, being told you're not good enough and stuff like that, I became really insecure. So my mom was the person that would always build me up. And then in high school when I was 14, I don't know why you're emotional talking about it. Still. When I was 14, she came to my room. And she said she had cancer. So, she underwent chemotherapy for 2 years and all these experimental treatments. Doctors would be like, this is going to work, this is going to work, but everything that they did just to spread the cancer faster. So then on October 18, 2005, she passed away. Sorry. So that was going to my senior year. And I guess maybe because of my insecurities or whatever, I blame myself. And as silly as that sounds, that's how I felt. There's something that I did that I deserved for my mom to take away from me. And looking back on it now, because I've dealt with all that, it sounds silly, but at the time, I was convinced that I had done something. And so my dad, a few months later, he retired from the military. He took a job overseas. So I kind of felt like he abandoned me when I needed him the most. My oldest brother was away at college. My middle brother, he was in college. He was always just kind of, he shut out the world kind of. So for me, I kind of felt like I was alone. So I started to become a bitter person. I started hating my dad. I started hating myself, and I was just angry. I was still seeking out approval from other people, like youth pastors and youth leaders, but I was still just growing my bitterness. I was serving on the worship team. I was singing. I was playing piano, bass, whatever you could do. So I was so involved. I started volunteering in children's church because that's what my parents did. So I felt like, hey, in a weird way, it felt like I was drawing closer to them with that. But every time I was at church, I felt like I had to put on this happy face. Like I'm wearing this mask, like I'm, Randy and Melissa's kid. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm great. I know I just went through like the worst experience of my life, but everything's fine. So I kind of felt, I guess I set an unwritten expectation on myself in that. And all my parents friends were at church, so if I set like one toe out of line, my dad found out about it, then he would call me and be like, John, what are you doing? What is this? What? I would skip school sometimes. I would skip church sometimes, which when you're there, every single time the doors are open, everyone's like, where's John? Where'd he go? And then towards high school, I started getting involved. I was invited to join a band, which was like, oh my gosh, I'm cool here now. No. But some of them would like start drinking and smoking, and then I would start drinking and smoking, and next thing you know, I was so bitter about just my life in general that I went out to a store, I bought a huge bottle of whiskey and downed almost the entire thing. And I was found passed out on the back porch, completely sunburned, laying in my own body fluids, and it was not pretty. So my childhood was different. It started out completely in the church, but as I grew older, I took so many things to heart, and then gradually started fading away. It's my childhood.
So here's what's interesting to me too, is you guys have heard like just our family lives and our stories and our dads and our moms and our parents, and all those things have had a huge effect on all of us as a staff. And John didn't have a great relationship with his dad, and he was close to his mom, and obviously we can tell. I mean, obviously losing a parent, especially when you're that close, is hard. But as you grew up in the church and then drifted away from the church, at what point did you find your life kind of coming back? At what point did you find yourself? Was it a rock bottom experience like being out on the back porch sunburned that was the lowest, but at what point did you kind of find yourself getting back to Christ and coming back to that?
So when I was 6 years old, I walked down the aisle and accepted Christ. But looking back, I realized that about a month or two before that, my brother said it was that. And so looking back, I'm like, well, I just did that because my brothers did it. And they got all this attention, and oh my gosh, Josh and Nathan are Christians now, and stuff like that. So I guess I kind of wanted that celebration to an extent, but I didn't really have that real connection, that real decision. So fast forward to the summer after my mom passed, I went to a youth camp. I know we have all these youth camps. I went to Centrifuge, which is my favorite one. And while there, my youth pastor kept noticing like how depressed I was, and he would keep coming to me and trying to talk me through like all the stuff that I was dealing with, the anger towards myself and my dad, would just trying to help me work through that. But I didn't want to hear anything he had to say. But sometime at that camp, I don't know, something changed. During one of the worship services, I just felt like God was starting to strip away some of the walls that I built up. And then there was one day that we had a morning Bible study, and the leader was talking about the passage from John 9, 1-5. I asked that to be put up on the screens. It says, as he passed by, he was talking about Jesus, he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who is it that sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, it was not this man who sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. Those work the works of him who sent me while it is the day, night is coming when no one can work. As long as I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. But those first few verses up to where it says in verse 3 about how no one has sinned, this man, what was happening in this man's life is going to be turned around used for God's glory. I just felt something welling up in me, like God was just saying directly to me, like, this is you. What happened to you is not your fault. It's not that you sinned or your mother sinned or that anyone else has sinned. That I have something to show through this. I have a plan in all of this. And feeling that was like, oh my gosh. It was just like the biggest weight in the world was lifted. So that week was really life-changing for me. It was also I was about to go into my senior year of high school, and I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. I felt like I had no skills. I had no dreams or aspirations. I'm like, I got nothing. So it was actually in that same morning Bible study, after we went through the passage, our leader told us to just have a moment of quiet time and pray, and just get whatever it is out that you need to with God. And after just having a whole emotional breakdown about what that self-forgiveness meant to me, I started praying about my future. So I was like, okay, God, I see that you have something for me, and I believe that, and I want that, and what is it? So very vividly, it was really weird. It's almost like deja vu, like suddenly I was there. But I remember having this conversation with my piano teacher, and he looked at me one day and said, Jonathan, have you ever thought about being a worship leader? I said, I could laugh for about 5 minutes. I was like, no. I never sang in front of anybody at that point. I never played. That was, I think, right at the beginning when I started playing piano in church. So I was like, no, that's not happening. But then I felt that conversation being brought to my mind and just like playing over and over again. And I was just like, God, is this what you want from me? And I kid you not, from that very second, I felt this sensation from the tip of my toes go all the way up to the top of my head. Just this warmth, like fuzzy, it sounds weird, this warm, fuzzy feeling. But I don't know how else to describe it. It was just this weird warmth, and I was like, no, that's not it. God, no. God, what is it you really want from me? And again, that conversation played in my head. I was like, is this what you want? And again, that same feeling went up, and I was just like, okay. So I went home. I talked to my my youth pastor about it, and I called my dad and talked to him about it. I was like, I think this is what God has for me. So we started looking around, looking for schools. We found Southeastern University right down the road, so I went there for 4 years from 2007 until 2011. So I see you guys. So yeah, I graduated there with a degree in church music, but I didn't go into worship ministry right away. Around that time was when I started getting pulled into the band, and I was just like, oh, the band's going to go somewhere. Hey, maybe this is going to be. So we would do worship events, but we weren't like a great Christian band. So I started getting more caught up in that and kind of put the worship ministry on hold. And I was just like, I'm going to pursue this. And then at some point, the band just started to crumble, and I started seeing all these things like just faults where like some people would be talking bad about each other, even though in front of each other, being like, hey, you're my best friend, blah, blah, blah. When I started seeing like, just slowly like this isn't it. Like I love playing music in front of crowds. I love playing with the band, like it was so much fun, but that wasn't where my heart was. We did a youth event one night up at New Walk Church in Sucker Hills, if you guys ever heard of it. But we led worship for them a couple times, and while we were leading worship, I was asked to lead a song, and I was just like, what? I think it was at that moment that I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, why am I putting this on hold? Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So eventually the band just fell apart, which I actually wasn't upset about. So I'm like, yeah, now I can quit and not be like, I don't know, I felt like I was going to let everyone down if I quit, but when the band fell apart, I was like, it's time, like God was just telling me it's time to pursue this. So I started leading worship at the church I was at before here, First Baptist Temple Terrace at their second campus. And then, yeah, so now we're here.
So as we talk about the transition into worship and leading worship and how you felt like that's what God was calling you to, let's talk about worship for just a minute and what does worship mean to you? Because if we were to poll everybody in the audience and say, hey, what's worship to you? And most of us feel is standing up, singing a couple songs before the pastor preaches or before somebody preaches, or it's what that looks like. But for you, as you lead us in worship week in and week out, what does worship mean to you?
So first and foremost, I want to say that this is not all that worship is. Worship is not just singing songs. It's not just one thing. It's not just your offering. It's not listening to a sermon. It's more than that. Worship is about the amount of priority that we place on God in our lives. It's more about our daily living other than it is what we do on Sundays. One of my favorite scriptures regarding worship is Romans 12:1. It says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. I think pretty early in my walk towards going to worship ministry, I found this verse, and I just clung to it as like my motto for worship. Just going into a little bit of it, talking about by the mercies of God. God has given us many things by His mercy. We don't deserve anything that we have. He's given us love. He's given us grace, hope, forgiveness, freedom, so much more. And then to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, it's not just your physical body, it's your mind, it's your thoughts, it's your actions, it's everything that we have. It's not just one thing, it's giving all of yourself. So what we do up here is more trying to facilitate that connection to God. It's getting the church as a whole to focus on Him and to build the relationships. Because music is a powerful thing. Music has healing powers. It has so much power. So we use music to try to facilitate the connection with God.
He's sharing the Romans 12:1, and not only like for his verse, but for me too. Like there's just something about that where every bit of our life, every part of who we are, every bit that makes us who we are, is given to the Lord in worship. And so, what's one thing that you wish people knew about worship? Like if there was one thing that you could tell somebody about worship maybe it's piggybacking and expanding upon what you just said, but there's one thing out here that you could tell one person that you wish that they knew about worship. Because here's the thing for me, I haven't been in the ministry all that long, but I think it's interesting to have been in the audience or even to hear people say, man, I just didn't really like worship today. Like, I didn't like the second song, or I didn't like this song, or I didn't like that. Like, I just didn't connect with worship today, kind of thing. And so we've heard that a lot. I've heard that a lot. I mean, there's even been times in churches or camps or services and things that I've probably been guilty of saying that myself. But if there was one thing that you wish that people knew about worship, what would that be?
I think just more going into kind of what I was talking about just now about what worship is, just really realizing what worship is. Like, I would just encourage you to like open up the Bible and read some of the stories about worship itself. Like, look at the life of King David, look at the Psalms. There's so many aspects and ways that we see worship through Scripture, and I think just looking through that, we see that it's not just one thing. David worshiped through dance. We don't have dancers. I have 2 left feet, so you don't want that. But just find ways to worship God in your life. I think if someone had talked to me, like I wish before going to worship leading that someone had this conversation with me, like just to let the worship in your life be the overflow, or the worship on stage be the overflow of worship in your life. And there's not really a simple way to do it, but the easiest way that I found to really worship God every day is through prayer. And I know that sounds like the church answer, like everything is God, Jesus, prayer. But there's a specific way to pray that I think you've actually preached on it before. But when you pray, like think of acts. So adoration. Spend some time with praising God for all that He is, all that He's done, and saying, God, you're so holy, you're so good, you're amazing, just all these things. C stands for confession, so spend time confessing whatever it is that you've done, any ways that you feel like you failed Him. T for thankfulness, so it's kind of just thanking for everything you have. Your kids, even if you don't like them at the time. Thank God for your kids, thank God for your house, thank God for, like, even if it's God confessing, thank God just for everything you have, because you're not promising it. It can be taken away in a moment. And then for S is supplication. So like that's when you actually ask God for things. So get through the adoration, the confession, the thankfulness, and then get to the point where you start asking God for things. Because a lot of times when we pray, we just start with, God, I need this. God, help me get through this test. God, help me get here safely. We just start with asking Him for things, but we never really spend time on the important part, which is the worship part of it, which is the adoration and thankfulness. So.
About from the standpoint of just church as a whole, so you had the opportunity, when John, you guys may not know this, but as he shared, like the very first church that he led worship at was a second campus of First Baptist Temple Terrace, which is a pretty large church in the Tampa area. They had a secondary campus that they kind of inherited, I think, in a way. Kind of this church was closing down, they took it, and then John was leading worship there. So he's leading worship for a pretty, I guess if you want to use the term mega church, for a pretty large church and their secondary campus. So being in that environment to then coming on board here and being part of the church plant is totally different. Doing things from the beginning with, just all the things set up and tear down and all the different stuff. But as a whole, as you think about church, like what do you love about the church the most?
I think actually my favorite thing about being in a smaller church is it's more like a family. Everybody knows everybody. Sometimes that works in your disadvantage, but when everybody knows everybody, you have all these relationships and all these people you can turn to, people you can ask, hey, I'm going through this, can you pray for me? And I think my favorite thing about church is that it's a hospital. We think of it as sometimes as a business or one thing or another, but it's a hospital for the broken, for the hurting, for the people that are hitting rock bottom. Look at the community that we're in right now. We have so many broken families. We have so much poverty and all this stuff that people are dealing with around us that some of us probably never even experienced. Some of us have, but some of us haven't. So my favorite thing about church is just what we get to do. And it's even through the little things, like the one day we have a work day, we went out to someone's house and we cleaned up their yard. Like that's huge. That's big for some people. And what you guys did for us when we had a baby and we just can organize some meals for us, and that helped so much. Like just even things that you may not think about are helpful, but like the little things, we're reaching out to somebody, hey, I'm praying for you, just randomly text them like, hey, I'm praying for you today, or just like that. There's a lot.
Yeah, it's been a good journey for us as a church. So I mean, for those of you that are kind of new being part of this thing, that we're almost 3 years in, which is kind of wild to think that next month in January we'll be celebrating our 3-year celebration, and we'll have a huge time, and we're gonna celebrate that big after the first of the year. But being part of that and doing worship in different environments, like when we first met as a church, and we met at another church, let us use space on Sunday nights, and so we met at another church on Sunday nights, and we had stuff in my office, which was an office space that we rented in downtown, and we had to unload it from my office onto a trailer to take it to the church to offload it, to set it up, and just tear it down. Tear it down, put it back on the trailer, take it back to my office, take it back upstairs, and we did that every night for about 6 months until the doors opened for us at the school, and then setting up and tearing down each week at the school and being part of that process. And so, but as John is saying, but the benefits of seeing what the church can do, and even the benefits of what we were able to do in the downtown community, and being able to love on North Lakeland Elementary School the way that we were, the things that we were able to do that, and the opportunities that we're excited about that we have here as we move in here to our new place, which hopefully we'll be at for many, many years to come. And so it's just exciting to see when the church is in action and when the church is doing what it should be, what it has from there. And so I think, so as we get ready, we're going to, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to transition to Christmas season and Christmas sermon series and these things. And we're going to focus on the idea of worship and what that looks like to worship through this season. And so I thought it would be important, one, for you guys to hear John's story, because even I've been around him for 3 years now. There's some things I heard today that I didn't even know, which is cool. For you guys to kind of hear that opportunity and hear some things from the story. But I thought it would be important too for you guys to hear and to understand his heart for worship. That him and the band stand up here week in and week out, leading us in worship. What that looks like, and for you to understand his heart as we get ready to transition into a season and into a series around worship. And so I'm just really grateful for you, man. Grateful for you, your stuff, and all that you guys do. It's amazing. He says that his love language is words of affirmation. We all have different love languages, and so if you don't know what the love languages are, email me and I'll tell you, or call me and I'll tell you about it. But it's life-changing when you understand, especially for those of you, side note, for those of you that are married or going to be married, understand what your spouse's love language is, game changer, right? Game changer. And so even as individuals, understanding what our love languages are, and then being able to, and for us to know that, and for us to be able, for me to know that about John, and to be able to speak into that love language. Like for me, my love language is acts of service. So when everybody's doing everything every week and making this thing happen, you guys speak my love language every week and you don't even realize it. But for words of affirmation or for quality time and some things, there's extra steps that we have to take. And so I'm just grateful for you. I'm grateful for all that you guys do. You guys do a great job. Can we give a round of applause?